Hey everybody, happy Thursday. How's everybody doing tonight? We got a couple things on tap. Talking about all of Chapter 3, which if you've taken the Intro to Database courses 1200 before, you're going to be bored, I'm sorry. If you haven't, because it's not a prereq, then this is going to be essentially half of a course in one night, and it's going to feel really fast. So a lot of the things are not all that important to really understand deeply. So we're going to get into a couple details. I'm going to show you how to get things set up so we can get up and running and working with MySQL and making PHP connect to it, that sort of thing. All of the database stuff we're going to do in our applications, I'm happy to help walk you through all the database stuff because it wasn't a prereq. So it's just a bunch of clicking. It's actually really nice and easy with MySQL and PHP. There's a great little admin page for it that'll do all the things we need it to do. But so if it doesn't make a lot of sense, it doesn't really have to make a lot of sense. But we're going to talk about a lot of the basic topics and concepts around relational databases, and particularly in MySQL. It's actually MariaDB, but it's essentially the same thing under the covers. And that all came installed with XAMPP, which is awesome. So if you open up the XAMPP control panel, you can start up Apache and you can start up the MySQL server. Oh, I got to plug my other laptop in. Let me do that real quick. Yep, so you'll start up Apache and you'll start up MySQL. I bumped it. What is going on with this cord? There it goes. We're back. The HDMI connection in here is a little loose, so it keeps losing it on the projector, which is super fun. All right. So once both of those are started, we shouldn't have any issues with them. They usually install real nice and clean. If you go to MySQL and click on admin, it's going to launch out the admin page here in our browser. This is PHP MyAdmin. If it doesn't have the right port, because you changed the port number, you can just go pick whatever port number you had in there. So mine, again, is on 5080. If you never changed it, it should be on 80. It should be perfectly fine. Oh, that's not port 5080. All right, I'm a little confused now. That's not right. I don't think I changed my config. Yeah, it should be on 5080. Oh, whoa. Okay, I don't know what happened with the control panel. It got a little confused for a second here, but now I'm back, and it finally did load here on 5080. So you should be able to get your PHP MyAdmin page without a whole lot of trouble. It should just pretty much go out of the box, because XAMPP is awesome. So this is giving us a view of the MySQL database server behind the scenes, and we can build stuff out. I've got other databases here we've played with. You probably don't have all of these on the list, but you'll have a couple of them here. That's great. We'll go through, we'll build a brand new database, and we'll start adding the things that we need to it as we go. So before we actually get into the tool, we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about what a relational database is. Now, I'm hoping a lot of you are familiar with the tool called Excel. Does Excel ring a bell for people? Okay, so with Excel, you have these sheets, and each sheet has a bunch of rows and a bunch of columns, right? And we can do cool stuff in our workbooks. Like maybe you wanted to say, hey, I want to track a bunch of classes that I've taken, right? So maybe I'll have a course, like a required course, and then maybe we'll say if we've completed it or not. Is that too small to see? Oh, that's real tiny. Shoot. I think Zoom, that ought to work for us. How's that? Is that a little better? All right. And again, we just put things in here. Like, so if you're working on a particular degree program, we'll take CIS 1200, CIS 1300, 1420 and 1440, I think. For some of our web programming courses, CIS 1500, on and on and on, right? We can just list a bunch of things out, and we say if we completed them or not, right? Or maybe you wanted to say like what semester it was. So maybe if you're like planning this out, you say, hey, this is fall 2021, you got winter 2022, summer 2022, fall 2022, winter 2023. Oh, gross. That's so weird to look at. You might say, okay, well, how can I plan out all the courses I need to take? You know, and here you've got your English 1510, your composition. You might have philosophy. I think you take an intro to logic course. Most people do. Is it 15 or 17 something? 1710. Cool. And again, like you just list out all the courses and you say, okay, so maybe I'll take this one in the fall. I'll take this one in the fall. Maybe I'll take this one in the fall. Right. But the idea is we have rows that represent something, and we have columns that represent something. So a lot of people like spreadsheets. Excel is unfortunately a little bit abused. It's probably used for more things than it should be because it's a really powerful tool. Oh, learn to code, redeem hats off. I don't actually have a separate hat to wear, so I'll just take my hat off. Sorry, I have a whole bunch of hats at my home office that are much more interesting. So what a relational database table is, you can sort of think of it as essentially one sheet in an Excel file. Right, we're going to have a bunch of entries in that table, which are all the rows we're going to fill out, and then we'll have columns. The columns are the attributes of that table. So if we were to try and kind of plan some of this out, I might make a table in my database and I'll call this, I don't know, my class schedule maybe. Schedule. Sure. And then in class schedule, I might again have a column for the class, and then I can add other columns if I wanted. In this particular spreadsheet view might be a little funny. Maybe we would just say semester. And maybe this works out better. And we'd say, okay, well, what's semester? So this would be fall 21. This one might be winter 22. Right? You can plug them in any way you want to do here. Right? I mean, we could have different semesters. So maybe that works out well for our table here. So we just say, what semester are we taking it? And when are we doing that? So we'd have class, we'd have semester. Great. It's all well and good. So we could build out a table here with that information. Now, there's no relation happening yet so far with just having a table in a database. So just like it's just essentially an Excel spreadsheet. All alone, it doesn't do a whole lot of good. It starts to get more interesting when we can relate tables to other tables. So now with this, it's again not all that interesting with just, hey, I want to track just my courses here. But imagine we were running a business and we wanted to sell a bunch of things, right? So we probably sell a bunch of widgets. Let's see, is that going to zoom in for? There we go. So maybe we'll have my widget. This would be like the widget name, and we might have the cost of the widget, and I don't know, other things about a widget, the weight of the widget, if we have to ship these things, that might be important. Sure. So throw out just for fun, like a couple names of widgets that we can buy. Hey, look at that. We got bots already on Twitch. And our friend Professor Perp volunteered to mod. I like that. There's a button here for that. Nope. Give me just 1 second here. Oh, I don't have it there. I'll have to do that later, Professor Burp. Appreciate it, though. This one here. I'm logged in over here. Get rid of this bot. Bam. Easy. All right. So, again, throw out some widget names, things that we might want to buy or sell. Anybody have any fun widgets?
Donuts.
Donuts, sure. Are we selling food then, maybe?
Yeah.
All right, so we'll sell. This will be our food, and we're going to sell a bunch of food to people. And how much do donuts cost?
How about 50 cents each?
50 cents. All right, easy. And weight? I guess we're probably not going to ship. I guess we could ship donuts. They probably don't weigh very much, right? Sure. So 0.1. Sure. Okay. Cool. What else do we sell? None of you. No one else is hungry. Coke? Do we sell Coke? Or Coke Zero? Which they changed the label on, by the way. I used to be able to like know it was Coke Zero because the label was black, and I drink the ones that were black in the fridge, and everyone else in my family would drink the ones that are red because I can't have the sugar. And now they're all red labels. Like now my kids will drink my Coke Zero instead of their Coke, and I can't drink the other Coke because it will kill me. I can drink it. I just have to take like a ridiculous amount of insulin. Like the amount of sugar in a bottle of Coke is insane for like the volume that it has. It's just nuts. So that burns through my insulin kind of fast. So I try not to. All right, so Coke Zero, that's really expensive, right? So it's probably what, $1.50, and how much does it weigh? 0.5 maybe?
Yeah.
Sure. All right, so we can sell that. We have Coke, we have donuts. What else should we sell? Pizza? Pizza, what, $5 pizzas? Right, we could be like those people. That's probably a pound of pizza? I don't know. I've never actually weighed it before. But sure, so we have a bunch of things that we're going to sell. And coffee, yeah, and chicken. Okay, so people online are telling me here. Coffee, we should definitely sell coffee. Coffee should be cheap, $1. Again, probably weighs half a kilogram. Or no, half a pound, so that's like a quarter of a kilogram. We should always do things in the metric system because our imperial system of measurement is just awful, and I hate it. That's another issue. And chicken, all right. Is this like fried chicken, IVD? Or roasted chicken, broasted chicken? I don't know what kind of chicken. Whole chicken?
Fried chicken.
Fried? All right, fried chicken. I like it. And that's probably what, $2.50 a piece maybe
Yeah.
for a quarter pound. I don't know. Sure. Anyway, so we got a bunch of list of things that we want to sell. We could put that in a spreadsheet here, right? And then if I wanted to like track when I actually sell things, I would need another table, right? So then over here, you say this is like our sales log. So we might have a sales date, might even have the time. I don't know. We might have the total purchase amount or total cost, and then like the things that they bought, right? So things bought. I don't know if we're like going to build out a receipt. Things bought, sure. And maybe we even have like customers if we're going to have some sort of rewards program. Right? Who was the person who bought this thing? All right, so sure. Okay, so let's buy some stuff. So today, oh goodness, this is okay. Excel formatting is a whole other issue, but it's okay. Today at 5:30, total cost was $1.50. I bought a Coke to bring to my way to class. Great. Okay. Anybody have chicken today? Maybe chicken. We'll pretend then. So someone bought chicken. Okay, cool. Should I buy the chicken? Okay, I'll get the reward points. That's fine. And what if I bought chicken and a pizza, like at the same time? Right, do I need another entry here, or should I say like this was chicken and pizza, right? And then my price was like what, $6 or something? You can see this is not going to be a very easy way of tracking these sorts of sales, because then I've got like multiple entries here, and if I want to see, hey, what's the most popular thing I sold? You're gonna have to like eyeball it and see, oh well, someone bought pizza as the third item, or maybe it was the first item for this other person. So this is not great at all when we have to start tracking this stuff. And then what happens, because we pay our sales clerks like the least amount of money of anybody, they really don't care much because they're not getting paid to care. So if they're like having to manually type in what things I sold, maybe they say like chicken. And then I'm going to have entries that say chicken and other entries that are actually spelled correctly, or all sorts of other issues. So we're going to have problems with the data not actually matching. And if I want to say, oh, you know, what should I invest in? What is selling really well, or should I run a deal on things? It's going to be really hard to use that data to make good information and make good business choices. So Excel starts to fall flat. Enter the database. So this relational database, right? So we looked at like class schedule, sure. Now we'll look at, hey, this will be an item. This is essentially the same thing, right? This is the name of the item. We have our name, we have the cost, and we have the weight. Sure, that one's great. It'll work just the same for us. No problems here with item. But then what we can do is we can have a table here that is for sales. And then in the sales, again, sure, we'd have like date, we'd have time. I need more room here, right? Date and time, make that bigger. What else do we have? We had customer, we had total, and we also had items, right? So that was what we had in a spreadsheet. And again, we're going to run into that same problem. So what we need to do is we need a way to relate these to each other. So I don't want to have a bunch of entries of item put into over here. Right? I don't want to have to re-enter all of that data. I want a way to reference something from my item table. So what we're going to do is we can add another table here. We'll say, hey, this is the sales item. We're going to add another table here, and what we can do here is we can relate to, hey, what item are we selling, and what sale did that belong to? So I can say, okay, hey, maybe we add a way to identify these things. If we add an ID column, a little shorthand notation, ID column, say this is item number 1, item number 2, item number 3, right? Sale number 1, number 2, number 3, right? On and on and on. So I can say, hey, for sale, so for sale ID, and then for item ID, I can say, hey, sale number 1 bought item number 1. Sale number 1 also bought item number 2. Sale number 2 bought item number 3. On and on and on. So I can have an individual row in this table that is going to relate to which item was it and which sale was it for. So the clerk who's entering it here doesn't need to say, hey, it was for chicken, and actually type everything out. They can just say, like, pick from a drop-down list of, hey, these are the things that we sell. Here, we can give a nice little drop-down list. So we can enter the data in a way that relates here. So it's going to reduce our data redundancies. So I don't have to have the same thing typed in more than once. Right? Type in chicken once, and then just say, oh, chicken is number 1, or item number 1. Right? And then real quickly, what we can do in our database then is I can say, hey, how many times did I sell this particular item number? And I can look real quickly through a list of, hey, here's all the times I've sold this item number. Great. And then additionally, we can add other pieces of information here for this sales item that are going to be helpful for us to have. A lot of times what you're going to do here is you're going to have the item cost in here, and that's just going to be a copy of the current cost of the item. Because in our database, if today I sell pizzas for $5, and now all of a sudden cheese gets really expensive because supply chains are hard, and I need to raise the price of my pizza so I don't lose money, if I say, okay, this was pizza, if it was 5, if I change that to 6, if I don't have the current cost at the time when I sold it listed, and I go say, oh, well, how much did that cost? I would say, okay, well, pizza cost $6. So when I sold it to customer number 1 yesterday, it probably cost $6. I've lost that information. So sometimes the duplicate or redundant data makes sense. That's called like a controlled redundancy. So we're not getting rid of all redundant data everywhere, but as often as we can, we're going to get rid of that data, and all this process is going to be automated. Like our sales clerk isn't going to type in the price. The sales clerk will scan the barcode, and then we'll come up and say, oh, this is how much that cost was, because it will go look up in this table for us and say, okay, this was the product barcode. Here's the price right now today. And then tomorrow, if the price changes, if they go buy it again, they'll say, hey, why is my pizza $6 today? We'll say, oh, cheese got more expensive, right? Anything with meat on it, price is going to be going up, right? Meat prices are going through the roof recently for all sorts of reasons. Economics is really fun, by the way. If you have like an optional elective to take, I strongly recommend economics. Super interesting field. So we can relate the information here in a way that you can't do or can't do well with Excel. People have done these sorts of crazy things in Excel because like people in the business field have taken a class on Excel for doing all sorts of cool things in it, and that's the tool that they know. And it's, if it works, great for them, but it's not the appropriate tool. And as a software developer, like it hurts me when people don't use custom software to do like actually the right things. Right? They take a square peg and they jam it in the round hole, and it sort of fits. And Excel can sort of get the job done, but it's going to lead to all sorts of other problems. Not that software is perfect or anything, but like, I don't know. All right, so that's a real quick overview on tables and relationships. So anytime we're looking at some sort of relationship between tables, in database land, the relationship, so if we're looking at like customers buying products, you want many of your customers to buy many of your products, and you want many of your products to be bought by many customers. So that relationship, like how they relate to each other, we'd say it's a many to many. Many customers buy many products are bought by many customers. Anytime you have one of those, we can't do that in database land. So in our database land, we need to add this joining table here. So this is our joining table. And the joining table is going to take that relationship that was many to many, and it's going to change it to a many to one. There's all sorts of notation you'll learn in 1200 around how we can do this with crow's feet or Chen notation or UML notation. So again, the notation part doesn't really matter to us for our purposes. But no, it's going to take where it was many to many, and it's going to turn it into a one to many. So it takes one relationship and turns it into two that are one to manys. So a common one that you folks might be familiar with is, hey, I've got a student many students will take many courses. And actually, this is probably section of a course if you want to get specific here, right? You take a specific section at a given day and time in a given semester, that sort of thing, not just 1200 or 2454, right? Sure. So we'd say many students take many sections, and a section many sections have many students. Sorry, again, it's chicken scratch, but that's we could use all sorts of notation. So what we're going to do instead then is we're going to change that relationship to say, hey, one section will have many students enrolled. And one student will enroll in many sections. Right? Maybe it's just one. Maybe you just take one class. That's cool. No big deal. But throughout all of your college career, you're probably taking more than one class. Right? So again, many just means it can be more than one. It doesn't have to be. Right? So just keep that in your back pocket, that many is like one or more, or even sometimes 0 or more, right? When you first enroll at school, you're not in any classes, right? You registered, but you have no classes. So like it's 0 or more, 0 or many, right? So again, other fancy notation there. But what's cool now with that enrollment table is I can keep additional data too. I can keep like, hey, what is your grade? What grade did you get for that given section that you enrolled in? Right? So it also lets us add more things about it. Sometimes enrollment date is important. I don't think it matters much, but maybe they could track the date you enrolled in this enrollment table. So we're going to deal with that sort of relationship. So the example we're going to go through, because I think it's a lot of fun. I know Wall Street Bets is a little bit old here, but if we wanted to like build a stock trading application, right? Many people will own many stocks, and many stocks are owned by many people. Right, so I have that many-to-many relationship. In fact, like millions of people own stock in companies, or at least they sell millions and millions of shares, right? So maybe it's just a couple hedge funds who actually own the stock or mutual funds, but theoretically, millions of people could participate and own individual shares of a company with all that spare money you guys have, I'm sure. So, but again, we'd have here's the stock, and in our stock table, again, we have a symbol, YM symbol. And then we probably have the name of the actual name of the company, that sort of thing. Now, tracking value of a stock can actually get rather complex. We're just going to cheat here and say, we'll call it the current value, or the current price of a stock. Sure. Right. So, and again, that will change over time. We're not going to worry too much about that. So I'm going to make my phone quiet here. I'm sorry. All right. No one's saying they can't get on. So that's good. All right, so we'll have stock, right? And then we'll have people, I don't know, sure, people. And what do we know about people? Well, again, you probably have some sort of ID number in our system, because a name, for most people, is not all that unique. I happen to be the only Eric Chinesky in the world. Great. If your name is John Smith, there's probably a lot of John Smiths out there. So again, you need some sort of unique identifier. Please don't use people's social security number. That's a really bad habit. You'll need to track it for tax purposes if we're actually building a stock trading application, because the IRS wants their cut. You can bet that. But again, for most things, just don't even ask. Right? That's just a big security issue. Down the road, you can take other security classes, but we're just going to not even do that. We'll pretend we're some offshore company and we're kind of shady, maybe because we don't ask people. But okay, fine. So we have some sort of identifier. Right, we'll probably want their name here. We probably want to know how much cash they have on hand, right, that they can use for trading. Right, we're not just going to give people stocks for free. Right, they need to put cash in the system and use that cash. So this is like their cash on hand. Right, so if you want to own a stock, again, right, many stocks will be bought by many people, bought by many people, and many people will own many stocks. Right, so like own this direction, bought by this direction. And again, it's many to many. So we can't actually track that in a table. There's no way to do that in database land. So what we need to do, we need to add that joining table here. And maybe we'll say this is like a purchase. So one stock can be purchased many times, and one person can make many purchases. So it takes a single many-to-many relationship and turns it into two different one-to-manys with this joining table. And again, there's probably things we want to track here in the purchase table, like what price did you buy it at? Because that has implications for tax purposes. And you probably want to know like if you made money or lost money on it, right? That's kind of important to people, that sort of thing. So we can track here then by the symbol of the stock. So the symbol here is our unique identifier. So if that's your unique identifier, That's a U there. Wow, that's a terrible U. Unique identifier. Our technical term for this in database land is primary key. And usually we say PK, primary key. Not a player killer if you're into PvP games, but primary key. I never really got into PvP, like in MMOs. It always just made me sad. Probably because I got killed a lot. But maybe if you're good at it, it was more interesting. So that would be our unique identifier or our primary key. So we're going to reference that symbol. So when you relate one table to another, the table that it is in where we're referencing another is called the foreign key, or FK for foreign key. So a foreign key is another table's primary key because we're going to reference it. One of the things database management systems are really good at is ensuring you don't screw this up. So if you say, hey, I want to buy Apple stock, and you type in Apple instead of AAPL for their stock symbol, it's going to say, nope, no good, because there is no stock with a symbol of Apple. Right? So this is called referential integrity, if you want the technical term. You know what? I'm not even going to type that out. I can use my little text box here. Look at that. Referential integrity. Okay? What that's doing for us, come on, drag over here for me. Come drag over here, please. Referential integrity. Get F for reference integrity, I guess. So that's making sure that if you reference something, it actually exists. Right? So it's making sure that that reference has integrity. It will reference something that actually exists. So that's our foreign key. Right? So foreign keys have referential integrity. So our symbol here, and then our person ID, again, will relate to the person table. Who's the person who purchased it for this purchase? Again, you're going to have a date, because dates are important. You're going to have the cost, and you're probably going to have the quantity, right? That's a Q there, our quantity. So we're going to know how much you bought, of what stock, at what date, right? And what did it cost you, right, at that time. So again, the date is very important because our tax code cares about how long you've owned stock. If you own stock for, I think it's a year and a day, don't quote me on it, I'm not a tax expert. If you make money on it, you get taxed at a lower rate. That's called the long-term tax rate. And that's how most people who have lots of money end up paying way less taxes than people who don't have lots of money, because you're taxed at a lower rate for long-term capital gains. If you own the stock for less than a year and you sell it and make money on it, you're taxed at the short-term capital gains rate. We need to Google this. This is important. Short-term versus long-term capital gains tax rate. Let's see. Wikipedia, capital gains rate. I like it. Short-term versus long-term. So you pay 35% of your gains in the short-term gains. So if you own a stock and it makes a bunch of money and you sell it, that difference, right, the profit that you make there is taxed at a 35% of every dollar rate if you've had it for less than a year. If you've had it for more than a year, we're paying the 15% rate for long-term gains. So this is, again, how most people who have lots of money pay less taxes, because they're only paying 15% on their profits, because they probably held it for a long time. Right? Is that the 20 most recent rates? That's all 2019. Where's something like more recent here? Here's 2021. Let's see. Is this one in better? Should make sure we're finding more recent info. Smartasset.com. That sounds right. Okay. For 2021. Long-term gains. Oh, here we go. Okay, so they do even have a sliding scale on it. That's cool. So if you're making less than 40,000, you don't even pay any taxes on it? That's neat. Short-term gains. Okay, by sliding scale. Good to know. All right. Anyway, not super important here. But we're going to track it. Right? Dates are important. IRS likes dates. So if we want to build out these tables and add the relations, we can do that. Right, let me make sure we're doing this here. Awesome. Yep, we got tables, we got relations, we got columns. I'm going to show you later the actual SQL commands or SQL code. SQL or SQL is our structured query language for how all of that happens in database land for asking for information. So things that you do with SQL here, slide this up, or SQL. I think most normal people call it SQL. At least that's everyone I talk to says SQL. Sure. So it's our structured query, the U there, language. Okay. You can do, typically call them CRUD operations. So CRUD. You can create, you can read, you can update, and you can delete. Right? Those are the four things we're going to do pieces of information in the database. So creating is adding or inserting data, reading or selecting data, reading it, updating is update, and delete is delete in terms of what those look like in SQL land. So in the PHP MyAdmin tool, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to add a new database that we're going to work with here. So because you don't have any of them, now this part, for you to have the database, there's like different ways that I could send you scripts that you can run. That tends to not work well for me. So unfortunately, this is a little bit of like follow along, point and click. You don't have to do it right now. You'll probably want to do it on the laptop you're doing PHP work on, or the virtual desktop that you're using if you're using the virtual desktop. So you can make the database. Okay, so we're going to go to a new database. And it's all point and click. It's fantastic with this PHP MyAdmin tool. What do we want to call it? What's the name of my database here? Well, let's call this one our stock program. And we'll say create. Cool, and it makes the database. It takes us right to being able to make tables. So a database that's empty is not very useful, not very interesting. So if you forgot where you were, like you can just click back to a different, or just click back in the database, and it's going to take you to this structure page here where we're going to see all of our tables. So right now we want to make a table. So what's the name of our table? We're going to call it stock. Now, how many columns do we want? How many attributes are we going to have in our stock table? We said we're going to have the symbol, we're going to have the name, and we're going to have the current price. It's probably enough for now. So I only need 3 columns. Again, you can change it later, but like if you need more, you probably want to increase your number initially. Otherwise, you have to click a bunch more buttons. So this is all just making us do less buttons. And then everything's going to have a go button. Go tells it, yeah, go do the thing. It actually has a technical meaning in SQL, but for us, go means do the thing. So we'll make our table. All right, and then columns. Now, in database land, column types are really important because it will make sure that only the type of data that belongs in this column can go in here. So back in Excel, right, if I said, hey, how much did something cost? And I said $10, Excel could care less. Again, there's other things you can do in Excel to do formatting and highlighting and whatnot, but essentially you can put anything you want in there. So that's real bad. But if in database land I say, hey, this column is for numeric values only, it's going to puke if you try and type in $10 and throw up all sorts of errors, which is good. You want it to. You don't want bad data to go into your database. Okay? So the column type is important. So int is short for integer. You've all taken a programming course that was a prereq for this one, right? So hopefully integer makes a lot of sense. Good. All right, so for symbol, right, that's probably going to be our main types here are integer, varchar, text, and date. Varchar is short for variable characters, char for characters. So varchars are great, and you can give it a max length here. So I don't actually know. Some symbols are long, some are short. They're not super long, so I'm going to say like 10. It should cover everything. I don't think they get longer than 5, but again, I don't really know for sure. So it's technically less efficient to store bigger numbers than we need, But we don't care. We're not going to have billions of these things. Like at most, we're going to have 1,000 that we're going to list, and we're probably going to do more than 10 because it's just going to take a lot of work to add them. So I'll say 10 for the max length. That is important. So we'll call this symbol. Right? That's the name, uppercase, lowercase. I don't really care. There's conventions around it, but we could care less for our programming purposes. I'll do all lowercase, and that'll just make things easy. So symbol, then, as a variable number of characters with no more than 10 characters. So it could be less, but can't be more than. So for our variable characters here. Great. And then I need to keep sliding over. Then index. Index here, we're going to pick and say this is the primary index. This will be my primary key here. This is saying, hey, this field will be the primary key. Great. Varchar. We'll say good. Good to go. Primary. The other thing about being a unique identifier is at the database level, it will make sure you don't have duplicates. Right? You can't put a stock with the same symbol as another in there. It's going to puke on you. Again, at the database level, it will throw up all sorts of errors, which is good. You want it to make sure that one and only one exists with this primary unique identifier, because it should be unique. Okay, that's good. All this other stuff we don't need. Really cool things you can do, right? Databases are wildly powerful. We're only going to scratch the surface, and that's okay, right? You can get into all sorts of other database courses, learn the cool things they can do. So we're saying, okay, symbol's a variable character, length of 10, it's our primary key. This little box over here that is null can cause all sorts of trouble for us. So null in database land doesn't mean nothing. It means it doesn't exist. There is no value. So if I were to look at the table as we're trying to design these things and say, okay, well, I need a symbol, I need a name, and I need a current value. If I don't know what the current value is, I have options. So if my database table says null is okay, I could leave it as null, like I don't know. Right? Or maybe I say 0 for, hey, it's I don't know what the value is, 0. It can have different meanings. Generally, nulls are bad. Like if you think back to your programming course, right? If an object had a null value, it's going to probably crash when you try and use it because it was null. Sorry. This one I actually can't turn off. This is my sugar. Oh, I need to go get sugar soon. We'll take a break. We're due for a break in a couple minutes anyway. So nulls are trouble because we don't always know if that means I don't know what the value is. There is no value, right? It should not have a value. So like in person, again, a single column for name is kind of wrong because a lot of times you want to separate first name from last name for various reasons, but usually for lookups, that sort of thing. But if you had like a column for middle name, turns out not everyone actually has a middle name. All of my kids actually have 2 middle names. But if they don't have a middle name, do we leave it blank? Like here's just an empty string, we could do that. Or do I leave it null, as in there is no existent value? So just the ambiguity there around things being able to be null or not generally causes all sorts of trouble. So most of the time, we don't want things to be null. So if you don't check the box, the database won't allow it. If you try and enter data or insert or create the data and you don't give it a value, it's going to puke on you because it says, hey, it cannot be null. You can't give it a nothing value. You can give it some sort of like default or empty value, right? Maybe just a quote, empty string, quote, quote. Sure, that's fine. That will fit as a varchar. Empty is okay, but not existent is not. So again, most of the time we'll leave that alone. We won't check that. In some cases, it might make sense to say, okay, null is okay. Again, take the database course. You can get into talking all about that later. So we had symbol, we had name of the company. Again, varchar, right? Variable number of characters. How many? I don't know. For a company name, let's probably 100 or less. I don't know. Again, it's fine to overshoot for our purposes because we're not doing this at any sort of millions scale where it's going to matter. If you start scaling things out and working on real large actual enterprise applications that have millions and millions of rows, this is probably more important. And then we're going to say current price. And again, pick a convention. If you want to do camel casing, go camel casing. If you want to do this snake casing, go with snake casing. The database doesn't care. Just pick one and stick with it. So for now, I'll go with the snake casing. I think that's probably fine. Now price, it's not an integer value, right? because it's not a whole number. We deal with number of pennies. There's actually a really funny thing happening with the NASDAQ exchange. The way that they deal with pricing is they actually keep an integer value, but it is in thousandths of cents for something. Because they said that's easier than trying to deal with numeric values that can hold decimals, to deal with decimals here. And that's all well and good until you get to Berkshire Hathaway. I don't even remember what their symbol is. Berkshire Hathaway stock price. So the guy who runs Berkshire Hathaway, Warren Buffett here, that's not the right one. Oh, that's Class B stock. We want, where's this Class A stock? Yeah, this one here. Berkshire Type A. The stocks are weird. There's other like classes of stocks and things. But Berkshire Hathaway Class A shares here are selling for $419,120 per share. The guy who runs it has said he never wants to split it, and he likes this number to go up because he's a weird old guy. Has made a lot of money, but so people think he's a genius. He's also quirky, as most geniuses tend to be. So this number is getting so large that NASDAQ will not be able to store this as an integer much longer. Remember, integers have a max value. So this to the tenth of a thousandth, I can't talk. Essentially 2 more decimal places, right? This is tenths, hundredths, thousandths, 10 thousandths to the tenth of a thousandth. As if you store that as an integer, this number, if you look at that, so that'd be million. We're at 4 billion. We're approaching the max. Now, you probably remember back in Java, someone taught you that the max integer value was 2.1 billion or so because we allowed negative values. A stock price can never be negative, right? So they are eliminating that possible negative. So it's technically, what is that, an unsigned integer? So it can be double that. So it'll use all 32 bits here. So just a fun little tidbit here. The Windows calculator is super cool. The calc tool. I'm a big fan of it here because it has programmer mode where you can actually look at bits. Come on, calc. There we go. We'll pop this open. Come on. OBS just slows everything down. I'm sorry. So let's get asked if someone did not have a middle name, null might actually be appropriate. Yeah, so nulls might be okay, or maybe you just leave it as an empty string. Might be a better way of storing that. So in calculator, you can change the mode here. Standard is what most people use, but we're fancy. We're going to go to programmer mode, and you can change this from decimal to hexadecimal to octal to binary, all sorts of different systems. We're going to look at binary mode, and then you can change it to bit switching. In bit switching mode, you get to actually toggle individual bits on, off, on, off, on, off, on, off. Super cool if you're big and if you're nerdy, but if you don't care. So we're just going to turn on all 32 bits here to see what that max value is. The shortcut, by the way, is to turn on the next bit and then subtract 1, but this is more fun, getting to click all of these. Remember, binary is a base 2 system, so each one of these is the power of 2. So the max value here in decimal, sorry, it's kind of small, 4,294,967,295. So there's still room to fit the price of Berkshire Hathaway stock in an unsigned integer where all 32 bits are used for positive only numbers. There's still room, but they're running out of space. So the NASDAQ system has to upgrade and store their numbers differently. Hooray. That was a long story. All for us to say, sure, we could use an int if we wanted to copy their thing. Databases know how to deal with numbers with decimal places. They will take up a little bit more space. But again, the NASDAQ doesn't even have like millions and millions of stocks for sale. It's not that large of a number. I don't actually know what the number is. I'm sure we could Google it, but it's not important right now. Oh, does the stream keep freezing? I'm sorry. Let's see. I think we're better on bit right now. Let's see. I wasn't looking. It was a Twitch inspector. You can see. Twitch. No, I want inspector. Excuse me. Let's see. We're almost due for a break too. You know, I think actually the whiteboard slows things down. Let me close that back down. think that slows things down. Weirdly, I don't know why that like takes up so much, so many resources. Let's see. Oh, okay, yeah. Oh, we were unstable for a while there. I'm sorry. Should leave this open more often to check it. All right, well, we're building up our very first table here. Edge is using up a lot of memory. Why? What is Edge even doing? Not OBS. Edge. Doesn't even tell me what tab. It's a lot of processes. All right. Oh, it's still really clunky. That's weird. Let's see if I can close out some of these other ones. So I need PHP my admin actually. Here, I'll finish this up and then I'll flip over to Firefox. I might behave a little better. Sorry if it's laggy. Um, okay, yeah. So something happened here. I'm sorry, folks online. That's weird. We'll add the current price and we'll do this as a decimal. Sure. Not null's great. And then we want to save. It'll create the table for me. Is that still, sorry if it's still going bad here. That's weird. So we got a table. Cool. We're going to take a break. It's 7. I got to go get some sugar. Been talking for a little while. We'll come back to make the other tables here in a minute. And we'll go from there. Let's see if I can make this work a little better for you. Sorry. We'll go back to break time. We'll say 10 minutes, so 7:10. And we'll pick it up from there. All right. Goodness, close that. All right. All right, folks. How's it looking now? Let's see. Oh, not edge, that's right. That was my problem. Get rid of edge here. Okay. Oh yeah. Okay. I think it's more reasonable here. Just Firefox and OBS. Let edge die. Twitch. Yep. All right. It's unstable again? Or is that just for a second? Probably just when I opened Edge. Move back. All right. All right, so we're looking at the table. This stock table that we made has the symbol as the primary key. I can zoom this in a little bit here too, sorry. The name, variable number of characters up to 100, and then current price. I actually went through and changed this one. So when you pick a decimal, you have to tell it how many decimal places you're going to store. So you can always change them after too. So you just click the little change button here, and it brings back up that view that we had where we're looking at the individual table. This, like, changing all the different properties here. So just 10, 4 instead of 10, 0 as the default. So we can store some decimal places. You click on save and you should be in good shape. All right, cool. It's working better now. Thanks, Shibin Minku. It is really hard to read people's names. I appreciate streamers more. I'm trying to do, like, read everybody's handle. All right, so we got the top stock table, and we can always get back to it. Like, we can navigate around our database. You can look at the database itself. It shows we have one table. We can add new tables. Right? Lots of different ways to look around it. If you want to get back to that stock table view, you can click on the stock table. This view here is not very interesting. This is actually SQL command right here. This is select star from stock. It's empty. We don't have any data right now. So if we wanted to go add some data, we can click on insert. We can go add some data in our database. Next chapter, we're going to look at how we would do it in PHP. But for now, we can just say, hey, here's what I want to do. So what symbol? Let's go add some symbols here. So let's look up, should we look at GameStop? Are they not as interesting anymore? We can track the price of GameStop stock. Looks like 206.50 here. So it's GME is the symbol. So we'll go add that one. So the symbol GME for GameStop. Name GameStop. Current price. I already forgot. Like a little squirrel. 206.5. Cool. We can say go. And you can add more if you want, but we can do one at a time. We'll say go. Now it shows us what it ran. This is really cool. So this is the actual SQL behind the scenes. Let me zoom in a little more, sorry. The projector here is terrible, I'm sorry. I guess it doesn't like my HD. Is it not zooming anymore? Is that it? How big do we need to get? Like, it's still barely legible on the projector. This is awful, I'm sorry, folks. Insert into the name of the table, and then parentheses, the list of the columns or the attributes. So we're saying, hey, insert into stock table, attributes, symbol, name, current price, and parenthesis. And then values, another set of parentheses, GME, GameStop, and the price here. And then a semicolon. So this is the SQL command we're going to go ahead and run later when we get to the PHP side of things to add data. Again, don't worry too much about it. We can always go and ask and have it look it up for us. I don't know why the zoom there was so bad. Is that still not even great? I'm sorry. If it gets too big, I can't even navigate around. But now if we click back on our stock table and look at this main view of it here, when it does this select star from stock, star meaning everything, like a wildcard, we're actually going to get some data here. Now, the data is kind of a little funky looking, but it's over in this middle section here. Is it still freezing up? Or is it working better now? Is it really getting super laggy? Let me close this down. What else can we close? I don't need my Discord open. That's even the wrong one. Let me close out of Discord here. Sorry, folks. It usually behaves a lot better. I don't know why it's so cranky today. Okay, I think it's been stable last couple minutes. Apologies for the trouble. But we see you can edit the row, you can copy the row, you can delete the row, and then you can actually see the data. Symbol, GME, name, GameStop, current price. Right, we see, hey, we got a bunch of decimal places. So we're good to go for GameStop. Right, again, we could add as many as we wanted. Doesn't really matter too much right now. But we're going to go add another table. I'm going to do a new table. Oh, and someone asked for a dad joke. Thanks, Bill9. I didn't see that earlier. You know how like every day is like a national day of something, or National Awareness Day, or Awareness Week, or whatever? I was worried. Turns out this week was National Diarrhea Awareness Week, and I was worried we weren't going to celebrate it enough, but it turns out it runs all week. So don't worry. All right, so it's a little bad, but we're going to make a new table. This one here, hey, what's the name of the table? This was going to be our person table or something, or owner, I don't know, whatever we want to call it. And we'll just do all lowercase, keep it nice and easy. So name, we're going to just do an ID for the name here. Now you just pick some sort of identifier for them. And now integer values are really nice and easy here for this. And then there's another way of storing data or adding this as the primary key that I'm really fond of. So if you come over here, there's this little box here for AI. This is auto increment. This means I want the database to pick this for me. So I'm going to check this box, and it's automatically going to mark it as the primary key. You don't often have auto increment fields for other reasons. There could be, but again, this is a very common use of it here. So just checking auto increment is great, and it's going to set it as the primary key. So what that means is when I add data, the database will insert this one for me. There's some cool things around it. You can pick different values and seeds and whatnot, but that's all well and good. So we're just going to leave it ID as an integer, set that auto increment, and we're good to go. Then we're going to have first name, last name. I don't know, we could do all sorts of things here. It's probably better, so we'll say first name as variable number of characters. Probably no more than 20 for first name. Maybe we could go longer. Last name, variable number of characters. Again, probably no longer than 30 for last names. I don't know. My kids all have a 15-character last name. My wife hyphenated. She's the last of her name, all the generations. She's the last one to have it. And she didn't have any brothers. And her sister changed her name. So she hyphenated, and the kids got the hyphenated name so they can keep the name around. I've got lots of Cherneskys out there. No other Erics, though. My brother didn't want to name his kids Eric. Go figure. But he's got kids with Chernesky. So first name, last name. Great. Again, it's better to separate this out. The general rule of thumb for a database table or database field or attribute is that it should only have a single value. Right? Having more than one value in that field is really bad form. So like name having first and last or middle even is just bad form. So we won't worry about middle. Middle seems silly. And then we wanted to have cash or balance, or I don't know, why don't we just say like cash on hand? How about balance is probably easier. I'll just type balance. So this is their balance here, and that's, again, probably not an integer value, probably a decimal. And I could say, hey, like 10, 4 or something. They probably only have pennies, actually, but you know, when you deal with stocks and they have like fractional values, unless we're rounding and taking their money away, it's probably fine to leave it as 10-4. Okay. Now, for balance, we probably don't want it to be null. Like when someone starts an account, we probably want it to be 0. 0 makes more sense than null. And then all of our operations are probably going to add to balance or subtract from balance. If it starts as null, you can't add and subtract from null, but you can add and subtract from 0. Really nice and easy. So again, null is not even appropriate here. Cool. So we're great. We got our table. This is person. You have an ID, a first name, last name, balance. The ID is going to auto increment. Anything else we need to know about person? We could always go add later if we need to, but that's fine. We'll say save. Oh, someone wants another dad joke. Okay, the first one wasn't good enough here. On Twitch, you get channel points for watching along. It's just fun. And it's always nice to have a little distraction here. This could get real heavy and boring if you're always just focused on the same thing. Let me see, I got another one here. I keep all of these. I love fun dad jokes. Did you hear about the new pillows they made? They're corduroy pillows. They're making headlines everywhere. All right, just one little. All right. I miss corduroy. I don't know. That was a great material. Look at our person table. So I'm going to add some data here. I'll add myself. So again, ID, I'm just going to leave this alone. For auto increment, you just leave it alone and it will generate the value for you. You don't have to tell it anything here. And generally, if you do, it will be weird anyway. So just leave this alone because it's an auto increment. I'm going to say Eric Charneski. And again, I'm going to start with 0 for balance, right? We can go add and subtract from that later. And I'll say go. And the SQL it generates is, hey, insert into. Great. And again, it shows you if you want to rerun it or change it, you can even like change the SQL here and rerun it. That's all well and good. We're great. So I'm going to go back to browse. It ran it, said it was successful. Now we see, hey, the ID was 1. With an auto increment field, it starts at 1 by default. Again, you can change it. We don't need to. And the next one will be 2, and then 3, and then 4, and then 5. I know I ate sugar. Stop beeping at me. This lovely bag of honey roasted peanuts turns out is 3.5 servings. Because the serving size is 1 ounce of peanuts, I guess. Maybe that makes sense, but like, are you really going to eat this little bag 3.5 times? Well, I made it through most of it, but it was running late, so I had to come back in. All right, let's see. All right, we've been stable. That's good. So I think Firefox is the win here. So we've got me. We've got person. We can add other people now to our table. Other people who want to buy stock. We've got stock. We only have the 1. We can keep adding more as we go. Now we need that table that's going to relate to them, right? Where I can actually purchase stock. So we're going to add another table here. And what do we say? This was our purchase table here. So we're going to have a couple things. Now, when you deal with primary keys, you're allowed to use more than one field or more than one attribute, more than one column to make up your primary key. The technical term for that is a composite key. Doesn't matter. I'm sure it's on a database quiz somewhere. We could do a composite key of the person's name, or I'm sorry, the person's ID and the stock symbol. But the problem is then if you want to buy it more than once, that wouldn't work because we already have a unique entry. And you're allowed to buy stock more than one time, right, at different prices. So we don't want that to happen. So we want to do the same auto increment field. This is why these are great. Just call it ID, scrolling over and tell it, hey, I want this one to auto increment. No, sorry, not null, the auto increment checkbox. There we go. It sets it as the primary key. That's fantastic. Then we want symbol. Or we're doing all lowercase, right? So symbol here was a varchar. Now this needs to match. If it's different, it's going to be really hard to make this a reference here. We'll say this was size 10, right? Maybe it would have been better if we went back to stock and used an auto increment ID as the primary key anyway, but sure, we've already gone down this road. So we got symbol, and then we need the ID of person. Now I don't want to call this ID because I already have a field for ID. So I'm going to say this is person underscore ID because it's going to relate to the person ID. That was an integer field. Great. Then we're going to have, when we purchase, we're going to have the current, or the purchase price, I guess. Purchase price was going to be a decimal. And then, 10.4, I think 10,4 was our value here. And now I need more columns. So I need to go add some more columns. So I want to add, we had purchase price, we needed the date and time of the purchase. And I think that was it. So one more column. So we had date, I don't know, or purchase date, or I don't know, date. Sure, we'll call it date. And then there's actually a field for date here. There's also a whole set of date and time. If you want date and time, make sure it's not just date. So we want date and time. That'll probably work best for us here. Do auto increment fields automatically generate an index? If you're generally, it will be the primary key. You can make them not, but that is the default setting. When you go pick one as an auto increment, it says you probably want this as the primary key. So we'll have the date and time. We'll just call it date. We could call it date time if we want. I don't know. Sure. We'll call it date time. That way it matches. Awesome. So we're good to go. So we got to find our little save button here. If you want, it also gives you this preview SQL command. A weird thing in SQL, it probably makes sense, but there's like two varieties of SQL. One is DDL, or data definition language. When you're making tables and defining attributes, that's the data definition. So when you preview SQL, it's not the select or insert that we've been looking at. This is a create. This is the DDL version, or flavor variety of it. The ones when we're inserting data or reading data, the select star, that's DML, or data manipulation language, for fun facts. So you can see the SQL if you want. For all of our PHP side of things, what we're going to interact with, we're only going to do DML, the data manipulation. You can make really fancy programs that can go out and create and define tables and manipulate tables. We're not going to get that fancy at all. We're only going to say, hey, I have an existing table. I want to create, read, update, and delete from that existing table. That's as fancy as we're going to get. And for most applications, that's probably fine, right? So see, we got our table, right? Great. Now we've got that. Now we don't have any relations yet, right? We have these values, but we haven't told the database they need to relate to each other. So to go and do that, we're going to look at relation view right here. So we need to add, these are foreign keys, right? What in my table relates to another table's primary key. So what is my column here? So I'm going to go to my person ID. In the stock program database, you can relate across databases. Sure, we're not going to bother with that. We have just a single database. What table do we relate to? We relate to the person table. What column in theirs? Oh, it says, do you mean the ID field? Yeah, we want the ID field. It guessed. Because our person ID is an integer, we can only relate to another integer. So the only integer in the other table, right? That's the only thing, that's why it's the only one in the dropdown, because it's the only other int. Great. And then these on delete and on updates, these are important. One of the main jobs of the database management system, right, is to make sure we have referential integrity. What happens if you try and delete a person in the person table if they're referenced in the purchase table? Remember, we can't add something to the purchase table if it doesn't relate to a person. If that person ID, if I say 27, if I don't have a person 27, it's going to fail. But what happens if I did enter something for a person and then I try and delete them out of the person table? We want to restrict that deletion. We want to restrict that update. Say, don't happen. Don't let someone delete or update that ID if I'm referencing it over here. That'd be really bad to say, oh, sure, they're no longer a customer. Let's delete all of their purchase history. Right? Generally, we don't delete data from databases. Generally. There's all sorts of ways and reasons you might want to. But generally, deleting stuff is bad, right? Because then it's gone forever, right? If you want to say, hey, they sold all of it, we can then enter, hey, they sold at this price, and now they have some money. Do some sorts of cool things with that. But that's fine. Sure. So we're going to restrict. We're going to leave those alone. I'll say save. Notice I didn't give it a name here. It automatically added the name for us. Sure. The name's really not all that important. We don't really care. So these auto-generated names, purchase IBF key, FK1, sure, whatever. Now I'm going to go add my next one. So we also, our column symbol is going to relate in the stock program database to the stock table. And it says, oh, did you mean the symbol field? Because that's the only one that matches. Yes. If it doesn't show up here, we probably don't have the exact same type. Varchar size 10, right? This sizing needs to match here. Great. And we'll save that one. So this alter table, again, this is DDL, or data definition language. We're defining the table structure and the relationships. It's not the inserting, updating, deleting, reading stuff, the CRUD stuff. And again, sure, purchase IBFK2. Sure, why not? The name doesn't really matter. We're good. So we added those relations. Now we've defined them as foreign keys. Once they're defined as a foreign key, the database will ensure that it enforces that referential integrity. And go back to table view, go back to relation view, and we see, yeah, I've got these foreign key. They're considered constraints in database land. Great, all well and good. So now I can go and insert some data. I can add a purchase. Right, what ID? Again, leave ID alone, it auto increments. What symbol? It even gives me a drop down. The PHP MyAdmin is really nice. It said, hey, you relate to stock? Did you mean this stock? Yeah, that's the stock I wanted. The symbol of GME. What person? Well, what person? Okay, person Eric. Great. What was the price? Now, at the application level, we're going to say, hey, here's the current price of the stock. Throw this in. So we get to writing PHP code. We'll do all this behind the scenes. Right now, we're going to rewrite some history, which our application won't allow, and say, hey, I bought GameStop stock before it really became wildly popular, and I made a bunch of money. We're going to pretend that happened. I only made a little bit of money. I got in on it a little bit late, but that's okay. All right, so purchase price. We'll say, let's see, where does our GameStop stock price? We'll look back in history a little bit here. We'll say, hey, let's look at the year. Look at this pretty chart here. So back in February of 2021, let's go back that far, right? It was $45.94 on February 17th. So $45.94. We'll say $45.94. And that was back in February, right? So, oh, look at that. Exactly 7 months ago. Is that right? I can do math. That's February 17th. Time we don't actually care too much about, so we'll get to that later. So, sure. Great. We'll say I bought some stock. Oh, I forgot to give it I didn't have quantity. I need quantity in here. Oops. We forgot to say how much stock. That's my mistake. We'll go fix that. We'll go back to our stock table. And we want to go to the structure. No, I'm sorry, the purchase table. Purchase table. Go to the purchase table. Oh, sorry. Did you want more dad jokes? Uh-oh. I might have to increase the price here if they get too bad. So my police department put out a notice that they had parked one of their cars and someone came by and put it up on cinder blocks and took all the tires off. Apparently they're going around doing this to other people, but they actually got the police too. So now they really care. They said they're working tirelessly to find them. All right, so anyway, we're going to change the structure here. We're going to go to the structure of the table. And then we're going to go add another column. Right, so right in here, I get to add. I want to add another column, and you get to pick. The order doesn't actually matter. If your programmers who use your database are lazy, the order might matter. But generally, you're going to be very specific, and you're going to say, I want this column and this column and this column. So you know they come out in a certain order. When you go to this browse, the select star here is the lazy way. Star says everything. So if they select star and then they say, hey, the first column that they expect to be something is a particular value, and you go change the ordering, it's going to screw up their program because they're a bad programmer. So generally the order doesn't matter. But if people are lazy, it does. So we're just going to add a column. We'll add it to the end. Sure. What column? So we wanted the quantity, right? Quantity. And again, you can buy partial stocks. You don't have to be a whole number. So we want probably, again, a decimal. I don't know, like 10,4. We'll just keep going with that. So you can buy like up to 1,000th of a stock. You could probably even get smaller fractions. I don't know what the rules are on that. Now, when I try and hit save, it's going to be upset with me. Oh, no, it worked. Don't we have a purchase? Shouldn't have worked because it was not null. I'm really confused now because there's an entry here. Okay, it gave me a default. That's nice. So it defaulted to 0 if I didn't have a quantity. I didn't expect that to work. That's nice. So we want to change this one because I probably bought some stock, right? Let's go change that quantity. Let's say I bought 100. Just for fun here. All right, so now this is the update data manipulation language, right? You can create is insert, you can read, select, you can update, which is update, and then you can delete, which is delete. There's only 4. I don't know why I have so many fingers out. So update, the name of the table, set what attribute to what value, and then where here, this is the restriction. It says, hey, only do it if this matches, where the purchase ID is 1. So where the unique identifier is 1, update that quantity to 1. Technically, the where clause is optional. So be really careful when you run update commands in database land, because if you forget the where, it's going to happily update every single row in your table, every single entry that you have. And then we have to talk about restoring from backups. So just be careful. And we don't actually have backups because we're not doing a whole lot of interesting stuff with our database. So just be careful. All right, so now we've got purchase, and I should see all my cool fields here. So here's the purchase price, here's the date and time that I did that, here's the quantity, also here's the stock that I bought, here's this. Right, so we can go through, we can actually add the data, and because I have those relations defined, the foreign keys, it relates to this stock symbol. Fantastic. Do I owe you another dad joke, Shib? Oh my goodness. You wanted like 3 of them here. All right, one more. Are they that bad you're giving up now? You don't want them anymore? Let's see. All right. Yeah, I got them in here. Oh, I already told that one. Yeah, so I was in my fridge the other day, and the margarine you can get in those like little round containers, it fell out and it fell right on my foot, and that was a week ago. I can't believe it's not butter. All right, someone actually laughed at that one. That's impressive. All right. Yeah, you're welcome to post them. Throw them in the memes channel on Discord too if you find any good ones. All right, I think I owe you one more. So the other day I found out my girlfriend is actually a ghost. I was sort of suspicious the moment she walked through the door. The butter one was better than that one, really? Okay, all right. I don't know what makes for a good dad joke then. All right, so we got our tables defined, right? We can add data to them all manually. This is all through the my PHP or PHP my admin here. Now, the last thing that's important when we go and interact with the database, at a database level, there are users. And a user in a database has its own set of permissions. So we want to not run our database application or the PHP application that's going to interact with the database. We don't want to run it as the administrative user who can do anything and everything. There are bad people out on the internet who will try and do bad things to your program. And if you do it the wrong way, they're allowed to do bad things. There's this well-known list of security issues, security vulnerabilities with web applications. It's called the OWASP Top 10. This has been out for years and years and years and years and years here. So the OWASP Foundation Top 10. Don't know why. Oh, that's an ad is why. It's for the first one here. Sure. So the top 10 security vulnerabilities here, that's been out since I don't even know when. Some of the issues here. Where is it here? This injection vulnerability, the top 10 issue, relates to SQL injection, is one of the specific ones. If your application is asking the user for data and you don't sanitize it, if you just say, okay, sure, you entered your name when you signed up, registered for this, I'm going to throw that into my database, and they give you some malicious SQL code and you go and run it, it can do bad things. So there's actually a fun comic here. It's Bobby Tables. This XQC is, no, what are the letters? XKCD. It's hilarious. They've got some really good comics. Can you see that? Can you zoom in a little bit? These people are fantastic. I don't need to read it to you, do I? So drop table is the data definition language for delete a table. So if you throw in a SQL command and they just run it, and they just put the data in from their user and just run it, bad stuff happens, right? So there are ways to do it, and there are very easy built-in ways of avoiding this sort of nonsense, and people still forget to do stuff like that. I don't know why. But that's an issue. We'll look at some easy ways to avoid that in PHP land. But if the user that you set up doesn't have access to do that, you don't give it permissions to do the data definition language commands, then this would just fail anyway. So at the user level, we can also restrict that. So we're going to go home. We're going to go to user accounts. And we're going to set up a restricted user that doesn't have access to everything. So last semester, we made the college program user. We did a little college registration database. We're going to do a different one this semester. So I want to add a new user. What's their name? We'll call them the stock program user. You can even get specific around where the user's logging in from, what host. Don't worry about that. Again, sure, later on, take a database administration course and learn more about that stuff. We're not going to be lazy here. And for password, I'm going to be super lazy and just say test here. You can use anything you want. In our PHP code, there are good ways of managing passwords, and there are the easy ways that I have time to show you. The easy way that I have time to show you is we're literally going to put the word test or whatever your password is into our code. I feel bad about it every time, but we don't have time to go over the good ways, and they're just more complex, and they will make more issues for me later on when stuff doesn't work for you, because setting it up is hard. My apologies. I feel bad about it every time. But don't give it a real password, right? Just put in test. You're fine. Type it in again. Test. Awesome. Now, we don't want to grant privileges everywhere, right? We don't want to do that. We don't want global privileges. So global means on every database. We don't want any of that. So again, our data manipulation, select, insert, update, delete, importing files. We're not even going to bother with that. But the structure, this is the data definition language. You don't want to give them permissions to any of this if they don't need to do it. Right? One of the rules or one of the ideas in security is minimal permissions. You give someone the least amount of access that they need to do what they need to do. Saying, hey, you get full admin permissions to everything is really dangerous, it turns out. Right? Especially when your users sit around and click on weird email attachments, and then you give them permissions to do stuff they shouldn't be able to do. Don't trust your users. That's just generally good security habits. And then no administration stuff at all. So we're not going to give them anything actually right now. We're going to come back in a second after we make them and only give them permissions to our stock program database. So we'll say go. It makes the user. Now, instead of global permissions, I want database permissions. And this is the command if you're curious. You can do all sorts of cool stuff with it. So I'm going to give them database specific permissions. Which database? Well, we want to give them access to the stock program database. Let's say go. Which permissions? Well, we want the data permissions. You can check them individually or check the check all box here. Great. Don't do check all up here. Right? Not that check all box. It's just the data level permissions. And go. Great. So it says this is the actual command it runs. Grant, select, insert, update, delete on stock program to stock program user at any host. All sorts of fun stuff. Again, take a database class. Excuse me. Now we have a user account that we can use in PHP land to go and interact with this database that can only insert, update, select, and delete data, or do our CRUD operations. That's the minimal amount that they're going to need. If we're not even going to let them delete data, you can even take off delete, like to prevent people from accidentally deleting stuff or prevent you from accidentally deleting stuff. We're fine. It won't be a big deal here. Okay? Does that make sense so far? All right, so we've got tables. We've got a user set up. So it identifies password as extremely weak, but password without the D is only very weak. Yeah, so one of the common things when you deal with passwords is if it's a word in the dictionary, it's generally considered weak. You want to use stronger passwords than that. There's all sorts of really cool stuff coming out around password guidance that makes a lot of sense. That if you make a good password, like that's generally long enough, like the longer the better when it comes to passwords, the complexity portion actually doesn't really matter much at all. It turns out it just makes it harder for people to remember them. A long password that's like 4 or 5 words all just jammed together is better than a short password with characters and numbers and special characters and all sorts of uppercase and lowercase nonsense. That just confuses people mostly. So just use a nice long password, like jam a bunch of words together. Like, I don't know, my favorite song is yada, 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 is a better password just because the length of it is going to make it harder to crack. But that's all sorts of good stuff anyway. So frequent rotations is actually obnoxious for users. And most of the time they just put a number at the end because you have to have a number in. They just change the number from 1 to 2 or 2 to 3 or 3 to 4. So all sorts of good password stuff you can learn. Anyway, all right, so we got that all set up. So we should be in good shape there. Let's see. PHP my admin, awesome. So if you want to, the textbook has all the databases out there in SQL form. So if you go look up the PHP Rock student resources, if you like following along, you can go up and load all of theirs. Where is it here? Not the instructor one. I think it's just on their main page. If not, I can always download it for you. But you can run all of their examples to build all their databases if you're following along with their stuff. The back of the book warns you, like, it only works with certain versions. Generally, it's fine with latest version, but like they want to say they did it with this version, so they know it works with that version, and they haven't done it with the other ones. Here's the resources. Oh, goodness. See if I can find the book if it's got the info here. PHP. Free downloads. There we go. Oh, book examples. Here we go. So there's like you can download the zip for it here. Register. All right. I think I already have it. But you can register for free, or I can post it for you. But you can get the SQL commands, and then here in your database, you can go right to the SQL tab here, and you can just run SQL commands. So it'll give you, hey, here's a bunch of inserts, or here's a bunch of create tables, right? It'll make all the tables. Here's a bunch of inserts to add all the dummy sample data. So if you like SQL, or if you've taken the database class before, you're welcome to just type your own stuff. You know, I'm teaching the database course this semester, and I still prefer point and click than to type in my own SQL stuff. But again, I'm a big fan of tools, so you can follow along that way if you want with their examples. I'm not going to do the book examples. My goal here is that I show you a different example, kind of on the same topics, so that when you read the book, you see it a second way, if that makes sense. So like I'm not reading the book to you, because then what's the point? So this way you get two different examples of how to see it, and then if you want more, you just go Google things, and there's tons of examples online as well. So hopefully at least seeing it two different ways will help it click a little better in your brain, and then you doing it a third time when you have your assignments is helps cement it there. Okay. So I think we're actually doing pretty good. We're gonna get into, oh goodness, do I even have it here? There we go. I'll try not to open Edge again and crash everything. I think we're just doing chapter 3 tonight. It turns out it'll be a little bit of a shorter night, thankfully. So we can take the rest of the time to finish up anything you haven't done yet on the first project. Make sure the little loan calculator payoff thing's working for you. I had a couple people submit already. That's awesome. I did a screen sharing session with somebody. I'm happy to meet with you. I think I told you I posted my official office hours. If they don't work for you, I can still meet by appointment. So let me know a couple times that you have in mind that work well for you, and hopefully I can pick one of them that works for me. Again, dinner time typically is not good for me, but later at night after my kids go to bed, I'm open. In the evenings, mornings and afternoons are kind of hit or miss throughout the week. Just let me know. I've got other classes and whatnot. And then we did get an updated tutor schedule. We now have Mr. Tim, who is a fantastic tutor. He does tutor for 2454, which is awesome. We didn't used to have anybody who tutored for this class. So you can book individual meetings at no additional cost. It's not actually free because your tuition and tax dollars pay for it. But at no additional charge, you can book individual tutoring sessions with Tim, which is fantastic. He's a great resource. And he's tutored people for my classes before. He's a supplemental instructor for some of my other courses, so he knows me rather well and knows the sort of nonsense projects I come up with. So That's out there. And then we do have a email address. Our parapros here for our CS department do any support for the virtual desktop. If you're using that and it runs into any trouble, you can reach out over email to them. They're fantastic. Other than that, we should be in good shape. I'll post the quiz for chapter 3 tonight. Did I forget the quiz for 2? I need to leave myself more reminders here. Oh, okay. Yeah, we just had one quiz on chapters 1 and 2. That's coming up due tonight, 11:59 p.m. So at the end of tonight, I'll post the quiz for chapter 3. That'll be due next week, 11:59 p.m. and on and on and on. We'll go sort of that format, if that makes sense for you. Now, if it marks you wrong on any of them, please let me know, but you won't be able to see the questions until after it's due. So like, it's going to automatically score you right off the bat.